Hi, I'm Arun Sundararajan. Welcome to Tech at Stern. I'm here today with Rob Seamans, one of our experts on AI and the economy, an associate professor of management. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Arun. It's great to be here.
Tell us a bit about what you do at Stern. What do you study? What do you teach? What gets you excited?
So I spend about half my time teaching strategy, game theory, and courses around technology, taking the form of looking at AI, robots, and the effect that these newer technologies are having on our economy.
So you said that magic word, AI.
Yes.
I mean, we hear a lot about AI these days, right? What do you have in mind when you say AI?
Yeah, I'm not a computer scientist, so I'm not talking about something from a technical point of view here. When I use the term AI, I use it as a term to describe a technology that someone might classify as narrow AI. When people talk about AI, artificial intelligence, most of the time what they're talking about are very practical implications of really, really advanced software. All of that is narrow AI. There's nothing intelligent per se about the software.
So Siri is an example of
Siri would be a great example of AI.
Okay,
Yes.
so Waze would be an example of AI.
Another excellent example. Yes.
Okay.
When people talk about artificial intelligence and want to highlight the intelligence piece, and they have Terminator, something like that, what they're talking about is something that does not exist and probably never will exist.
Okay, I generally think about the car from
general
Knight
AI.
Rider.
Yes, yes.
It's a sort of more the focused technologies that are solving particular business problems, human problems,
Yes.
as opposed to sort of a sentient being that is silicon-based rather than carbon-based.
Yes.
Discussions about AI are often highly charged these days. I know you've been doing rigorous research trying to understand how will AI actually affect our economy. What are you coming up with?
Everybody is speculating about what's going to happen in the future, and it is all speculation. Some people speculate with much greater forcefulness than others. Okay? My prognosis is that AI on net is very positive for the economy. I believe that AI will boost economic growth. AI can be thought of as a general purpose technology. Prior examples of general purpose technologies would be things like computers, electricity, steam engines. And what we know from all of these prior examples of general purpose technologies is that they have boosted economic growth. And so we expect the same thing from AI. We also expect the same thing from robots. Modern day robots have been around longer than AI, and so there are some researchers looking at how much robots might be boosting economic growth. It looks like growth is being boosted by about 10% a year.
Wow.
The boost that the economy is getting from robots looks like it's on par to the boost that the UK economy was getting from steam engines in the late 1800s.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's good to have that historical perspective. What about work or jobs? Do you see artificial intelligence and progress in AI creating a higher demand for human labor, or do you forecast widespread technological unemployment?
I think that there probably will be some jobs that are lost. There'll also be some jobs that are gained, that we maybe have a hard time envisioning what those jobs are. The biggest effect is going to be just that AI will augment or complement a lot of the jobs that we currently have.
Do you foresee any particular industries in which the opposite is true, where the technology replaces the human being completely?
I could imagine autonomous driving really providing a benefit. Now, in terms of whether it actually replaces the worker who's in that current role, that I'm also not sure about. When we think about the pilots, for example, a lot of what an airplane does nowadays is highly automated, and you really only need the pilot to monitor what's happening and jump in the case of an emergency, plus there's the actual takeoff and the landing. You can imagine something very similar happening with truck drivers, where for large stretches, they're maybe just sitting in the cab and monitoring what's happening, and then really becoming involved as you come into a city center or something like that. When we talk advances that we've seen in terms of artificial intelligence and what AI can do, beating a human at chess, beating a human at Go. And these are use cases where there are really, really well-defined rules. And a human just isn't as good as a software program. I mean, the vast majority of jobs are just not like that. And so thinking about AI replacing an actual occupation, it's really hard to imagine how AI could do that.
I've felt the same way when the computer beats the human champion at Go. That's a really important moment for technological progress, but it's mapping onto job loss. No job is really sort of purely following a very well-defined set of rules. It seems like we're heading into a time of significant change. There's going to be a lot of transition, whether or not we end up creating more jobs than we destroy, whether or not we get the economic growth. Transition seems to sort of be a key part of what we should expect in the future because of AI. So you spent a few years ago, on the Council of Economic Advisors during the Obama administration. So I feel like you've got a really good lens into what could the government do, what kind of policy interventions might be effective. So what's your thinking on this front?
While I believe it to be the case that most jobs will not be lost, if anything, there'll be lots of complementarities and newer jobs created, I think it's important to think through what the skills are that are going to be needed in the future, and then think about how we can transition our existing workforce in such a way that they have those skills.
Okay.
And so I think that training and retraining are going to be really important for that. So we are entering a period of transition. I think it's a great opportunity for us to think through the existing policies that we have.
Okay. So what might some of those policies?
Yes, for starters, there are some policies that we have in place that seem like they work really, really well.
Okay.
So one of them is an earned income tax credit. If you meet a certain threshold, so you need to be earning an income but not above a certain level, you need to have children that you're supporting, you then get a tax break. Right? There's been plenty of research done on earned income tax credits, and this is a policy that seems like it works really, really well in terms of encouraging people to seek out the training they might need to find a new job. In the recent past, there's been bipartisan support for expanding the earned income tax credit to cover more of the U.S. workforce.
Okay.
Back in the good old days, bipartisanship.
And do you see any need for policies that address the actual delivery of this education?
One thing people talk a lot about is delivering this content online. Now, that's not going to work for all content. That's not going to work for all people.
Yeah.
But for sure, online delivery of educational content is one way to try to address, let's say, like a skills gap. Now, the problem, though, is that not everybody has access to online tools. If you look at income quintiles in the United States, the bottom income quintile, only half of those households have internet at home.
I see.
Right? And so if trying to increase connectivity is a relatively low cost way of trying to boost education, to provide some training or retraining,
absolutely,
some newer skills to take advantage of all of the good that I think that we will get from AI.
It sort of sets up the scenario that maybe the rollout of 5G, which will be central to a lot of the realization of the dreams of AI. As that's happening, perhaps you need policy interventions that is rolling it out not just in the highly profitable, densely populated urban areas, but ensuring that there's universal access of sorts.
Right. The evidence seems to suggest that over the past 10 years or so, there's been increasing income inequality in the U.S.
Yeah.
And in particular, it's large metro regions that really have been gaining, and smaller rural areas that are, where basically we don't see any growth at all. And we want growth to be shared, and the gains from growth to be shared across the entire United States.
Speaking about a different kind of universal access, there has been a lot of excitement over the last couple of years about the notion of a universal basic income, or UBI. I've heard a wide variety of people champion it, ranging from Mark Zuckerberg to Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang.
Yes.
Where do you stand on the UBI issue? Is it a good idea or a bad idea?
A UBI in and of itself, I don't think is a good use of resources.
Okay, why not?
It's really expensive. The basic idea might be $1,000 a month to working age adults.
Okay.
And so, rough back of the envelope calculation puts that in the area of 2 trillion, 2.5 trillion, maybe even 3 trillion, again, depending on how we're defining things.
Yeah.
And that's on a per year basis. Okay. I mean, that's just a huge amount of money.
I mean, can you put this into context for us?
The current safety net, social safety net spending that we do, and this includes the earned income tax credit that I was talking about earlier, includes housing subsidies, includes food subsidies, includes healthcare. All of that sums up to about $1 trillion.
Okay.
And so we're saying, we want to basically triple that. Or we're saying, maybe let's do away with all of that and somehow come up with an extra 1 or 2 trillion.
Okay.
In order to give everybody, $1,000 a month.
As my daughter would say, just because it's expensive doesn't mean that it's not good. If you did manage to get the political will to raise this $3 trillion.
If $3 trillion per year was falling from the sky, then perhaps we could, sort of magically finance UBI.
Okay.
I think it's more useful to say, let's imagine that can't happen, and let's think about the really hard trade-offs that are involved. So imagine a $1 trillion UBI where we take all of the existing social safety net spending and we just shift it to a UBI. That's about $500 a month. But then the question is, well, what happens if that parent can no longer put as much food on the table for their kids? Can they shift back to getting the food stamps or not? $500 might not go as far in terms of funding education. Are we okay with the large workforce that we have in the US no longer being able to afford education? What about housing, right? Again, part of the current social safety net goes to housing. It's useful for us to think really, really hard about the trade-offs involved between switching to an untested plan like universal basic income versus the sort of tried and true stuff that we currently have. I do like that presidential candidates like Andrew Yang, for example, are talking about these new policies because it actually gets people excited in policy. And so I think that's the sort of first step before you then start thinking about all the trade-offs involved.
Sort of raising the visibility of the need for strengthening our social safety net, and that seems to be happening through the vehicle of UBI, would probably be the biggest benefit of the UBI
UBI, yeah, I think that's right.
Thank you very much, Rob. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun.